Hello, everyone. My name is Davi Brito. I'm currently a Global Trace Mineral Program Manager for Troll Nutrition. Thank you for joining our Tech Talk today. And I'm going to bring some highlights related to the major risks and current alternatives for the complete replacement of this zinc oxide in poultry production. So just some background information, the zinc oxide, as we all know, zinc oxide is an inorganic compound. Most of the zinc oxide is used for rubber, plastic, and ceramic and glass, cements, but also can find in food and animal feed industry. And the reason why zinc oxide is used around this industry, and not especially in the case of the food and feed, because they go for more looking for the zinc use of the metal, but for the others because they are most of the zinc oxide are insoluble in water, so and that's give a lot of advantage in terms of manufacturing for those type of products. I can say that not even 10% of the all zinc oxide producing around the world is being used for feed as a feedstuff. About 80% of the zinc oxide produced around the world is used for the rubber and also for the concrete manufacturing industry, and to improve the water resistance, as I mentioned before. And for this reason, the process that produces zinc oxide is really focusing this type of industry, not feedstuff. And in that case, we start to observe a very big variability of result and also quality when it comes to the zinc oxide that you buy from dealers and manufacturers around the world. So in this case, this presentation aims to highlight what are the challenges and what are these risks when it comes to the use of zinc oxide and how you can be aware and what's available to use as a replacement for that. Generally speaking, when it comes to the zinc oxide use in the feed industry, they come generally from two most important processes: the direct process, also known as the American process, and the indirect process, also known as the French process. There's, of course, there's difference between the two processes and how they and how the process take place. But the very important thing, at the end of the day, at the end of the process, you want to have the zinc oxide as the major output. But as a raw material, the direct process can accept any type of material that contain some zinc content. And the same thing, a different that French process must use a very pure source of raw material with a very high content of zinc metal. In this case, at the end of the process, the product will be very different. So this direct process is going to offer much more contaminants and also lower relative bioavailability when compared to the indirect process. Just to highlight here, of course, this process has some variation. And one important is the Vowes process, which is a variation of the American process. And the Vowes process is the most common process that we use, where the zinc oxide is used in the feed industry to formulate our premix and our feed to livestock comes from. And in this case, generally, they use any treating zinc content material, most of the time metallurgical waste. So contain very high levels of impurity, and also the bioavailability of this zinc oxide when it comes to this process. There's a lot big variation and lack of response, as I'm going to show right now in this slide. So it goes to a very traditional work published in the Journal of the Animal Science, done by Edwards and Baker in 1999, where they compare different sources of zinc and sulfate and also some metal source of zinc, where they compare using a GCSA method and also compared to the zinc sulfate, create analytical grades to create a standard response curve. So different source comes from different type of process, and that's they have run here 3 assays, which are going to show some of the results. The first assay, they evaluated the relative bioavailability in total tibia zinc content and also weight gain, and compared the 3 sources of zinc oxide they have here compared to the standard curve. Big variation in the results. So feed grade 1, feed grade 2, and feed grade 3 offer different values for relative bioavailability, ranging from 94 to 32%. And the same thing in the case of the tibia, from 91 to 22%. Right here you can see, like, we talk about zinc oxide, but 2 different processes, 3 different processes, different results, big variation. When it comes also to the second assay, they also compare the zinc oxide and some zinc sulfate for food grade as well, and also some analytical grade zinc oxide with the standard curve created by the analytical grade zinc sulfate. And as you can see, also big variation for the zinc oxide, from 97%, much closer to the standard curve, down to 41% when it comes to the body weight. And as well, when compared to sulfate, you see 89, 86, and 87%, which is, there is of course a lower relative viability compared to the analytical grade. But one important thing to mention here when it comes to the sulfate, the process is much more uniform. You can see not that much variation as you can see the zinc oxide. Of course, zinc sulfate offers other problems such as the very high solubility and reactivity, but in this case you must be aware that the variation is lower because of the process much more uniform. But one thing that also take attention in this table is that when you compare the zinc oxide feed grade 2, the relative viability is much lower even than the zinc metal dust, which is not used for animal nutrition purpose. In this case, sometimes our zinc oxide is very, very low in bioavailability, which can affect a lot of the performance and also the outcomes of the animals along the life cycle. And in the third assay, also compare some zinc oxide and zinc metal film. You're also going to see big different results in variation. And as you can see, the feed grade number 2 again very low, very close to what you can see in the zinc metal film, which is not allowed to use as a zinc source for animal nutrition as well. So you must be in the animal feed industry, animal nutrition industry, must be aware of these risks when it comes to the decision which type of zinc oxide you're going to use. And most of the time you cannot even choose that because our dealers and distributors provide zinc oxide from different, they cannot control this process, the zinc oxide that comes to us. In this case right here, as you can see, I put the 3 assays together just to show that there is a big variation for zinc oxide from different processes. In special the Valles process, this one comes from Mexico, and this also a zinc oxide, which the process is unknown, comes from China. Big variation, very low relative bioavailability. So as a result, you could expect a very problematic outcome in terms of performance or health when it comes to these broilers, because if they need that zinc for some reason, the zinc is not going to be there to be absorbed. So internally, in 1999, in contribution with the Park Institute, we have run a very nice trial using the same Chick assay method to create a standard curve of zinc sulfate analytical grade, where you compared 17 sources of zinc oxide, and this source comes from the major suppliers of zinc oxide around the world. So in this case, after the end of compared to the zinc sulfate analytical grade that you have done here, as you can see, the relative viability, there is a lot of variation, but one thing took a lot of the attention is that the variability when it comes to the Valles process is much higher, from 30 to 6%, and always lower than the zinc sulfate. And when it comes to the indirected process, which is called also French process, you're going to find a much higher relative viability, much more uniform result. Remember that most of the zinc oxide that goes through French process is more expensive than the one that comes from the Valles process at the end of the day, and you don't see that much being used in the animal feed industry. Much more goes to the food grade and maybe special for pharmaceutical analytical grade industry, because they are using much more pure raw materials, which also increase the cost of the production of the zinc oxide. And of course, some of the zinc oxide result here was much closer to what you can see for zinc metal residues, which cannot be even used in the animal feed industry. So in 2007, a good publication compared our zinc source of our hydroxide zinc source of zinc sulfate, published in the Animal Feed Science Technology by Shan Gu. We could see that a difference in also in solubility, as we know zinc oxide has a very low solubility in water, but when it comes to some acidity and some basic acid and basic pH, you can see the zinc oxide solubility is much lower than the zinc hydroxide, our IntelliBond Z. In this case, which offer much less zinc available to be absorbed in the end of the GI tract. And that's what you saw when it comes to the bioavailability of the zinc in this trial, that when you compare the hydroxide zinc, the IntelliBond Z, versus the zinc oxide source used here, you can observe a much higher bioavailability in average, considered 25% higher than the zinc oxide. So in other words, a more uniform, a more stable, more pure, or even a more higher quality type of source of zinc can really impact the bioavailability of the zinc at the end of the day by using the animal. So as well as you can see, like also a trial done internally by us in 2018, we could see also using to understand the solubility of the zinc, compare different sources of the zinc. The most common source of the zinc from the most major suppliers that you can find here in Europe, we could see a big variation compared to our zinc hydroxide source. At the end of the day, after 20 minutes, you can see the IntelliBond Z was about 100% soluble zinc, but you cannot see the same thing when it comes to the zinc oxide, and there is a variation, depends on the sample you use here. Some will use in Vowes process from Turkey, Germany, not even reach 6% after 30 minutes. Some come from India and also Mexico, not even 30%. So things to take attention, because if you don't have this zinc soluble in a pH lower as a 2, this zinc is not going to be available for absorption at the end of the day by the animal. So you're going to impact the bioavailability. So, and just to summarize here, I'm going to bring 2 trials done, developed by us, one in US and another one in UK. This one done in the United States in 2016 using layers. We use 2 treatments using zinc and manganese from oxide source and zinc and manganese from hydroxide source, 80 and 60 ppm. And at the end of the day, what we could see in this trial is an improvement in lay rate from 19 to 60 weeks, and also improvement, a better egg FCCR, and also improvement in shell thickness. In other words, using a better source, a more stable source of trace mineral, which can offer a better result, because at the end of the when the animal needs that zinc to be available to absorb to use for any of the functions, in this case to production, to increase performance in egg production, the zinc will be there. In other words, if you're using zinc oxide, you're gonna in somehow cannot control the amount of zinc that can be absorbed. And also when it comes to our UK trial done in 2018, right here using 15 and 80 ppm from copper, 15 ppm copper and 80 ppm zinc from copper sulfate zinc oxide, or in copper and zinc hydroxide. In this case, you could see a very nice result in weight gain. So zinc, the hydroxide zinc could improve weight gain of the animals and also improve feed intake. And when it comes to the overall oxidative stress markers, you use here methylmalonic acid and uric acid, you could see a reduction of both. So in other words, the zinc were available over there for absorption, higher bioavailability. The zinc could be using not just to improve the performance, but also to reduce the overall oxidative stress in the animal. As a summary implications, we know different feed grade sources of zinc oxide are variable in quality, appearance, zinc content, bioavailability, impurities, and process methods. The different manufacturing process and sub-process make the zinc oxide result prediction even more complex. For unknown reason, probably because of the type of the very big variation of the type of raw material used in the Vowes process, this process presents the higher variability and lower bioavailability results compared to the other zinc oxide methods. But all the zinc oxide manufacturing process and sources also reflect a large variation and outcome result when compared to other sources, especially hydroxides. As a conclusion, change from supplier has deep effect on quality and performance. Replacement of zinc oxide for IntelliBond Z is preferred for quality assurance and animal performance reasons. IntelliBond Z offers much more stability, safety, bioavailability, performance results than zinc oxide and other anorganic source of zinc. Thank you very much.